I've been married to Lily for 6 years. She's always been a light sleeper, tossing and turning at the smallest sound. I, on the other hand, sleep like the dead. At least, I used to. Lately, things have changed. It started a week ago. I woke up in the middle of the night for no reason. The room was dark, the kind of pitch-black darkness that feels suffocating. I turned to my side, reaching out for Lily. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw something that made my breath catch in my throat. She was awake, lying on her side, facing me, her face barely illuminated by the dim glow of the moon filtering through the curtains. And she was smiling. Not a warm, sleepy smile. Not the kind of affectionate smirk she'd give me when I mumbled nonsense in my sleep. No, this smile was wrong. Too wide, unblinking. Her lips stretched just a little too far. A chill crept up my spine. "Lily," I whispered, my voice hoarse from sleep. She didn't move, didn't blink, just kept staring at me. That eerie grin plastered across her face. A shiver ran through me. "Babe, are you okay?" Silence. Then, finally, she blinked, slow and deliberate, as if she had just remembered how. The smile faded, and she frowned. "What?" she murmured groggily, her voice thick with sleep. "You were smiling at me." She rubbed her eyes, rolling onto her back. I was asleep. I swallowed hard. She hadn't looked asleep, but maybe I had imagined it. Sleep paralysis, maybe? I'd heard of people seeing things when they wake up suddenly. Still, as I lay back down, something felt off. The next night, it happened again. This time, I woke up to the sensation of being watched. That primal feeling that pricks at the back of your neck, telling you that you're not alone. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding in my chest. There she was, lying perfectly still, her body barely rising and falling with her breath. Eyes open, and that smile, too wide, too still. I felt my stomach knot. "Lily," I whispered. Nothing. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I gently touched her arm. The moment my skin brushed hers, she twitched violently, her body jerking as if I had shocked her. Her mouth snapped shut, and she sucked in a sharp breath. Then, suddenly, she looked normal again. Sleepy. Confused. "Why are you awake?" she mumbled, rubbing her forehead. "You were smiling again." She blinked at me, her brows knitting together. I nodded. My throat felt dry. She sighed and turned onto her side. "Weird dreams, I guess. Go back to sleep." I lay there for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling. That wasn't a normal sleep smile. I knew my wife's face better than anyone, and that wasn't her usual expression. It was something else. By the third night, I was too scared to sleep. I stayed up, pretending to be dozing while keeping my eyes half-lidded, watching. 1:30 a.m. Lily stirred beside me, shifting slightly under the blankets. 1:45 a.m. She let out a quiet sigh, rolling on her side to face me. 1:50 a.m. Her eyes fluttered open. My stomach clenched as I watched her expression change. A slow, deliberate transition from neutral to something unnatural. That damn smile. It spread across her lips like something inhuman, her teeth barely visible in the dim light. Her body remained utterly still, but her eyes, they were locked onto mine. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just watched. 2 minutes passed. 5. She didn't blink, didn't twitch. Then, without warning, she sat up. I nearly gasped but bit my tongue. My fingers gripped the sheets tightly as she swung her legs over the bed and stood up. She moved strangely, not in her usual sleepy shuffle. It was too smooth, too deliberate, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. She walked toward the bedroom door. My breath hitched. "Lily." She stopped. For a long moment, she didn't turn around. Just stood there, her back to me, head tilted slightly like she was listening. Then, slowly, her neck twisted farther than it should have. Her head turned at an angle that made my stomach lurch. And she smiled. Not just at me. Through me. I finally found my voice. "What the hell are you doing?" Her head snapped back to normal, and she blinked rapidly. "Jesus, Nathan, what's wrong with you?" I felt ice in my veins. "You were sleepwalking." She frowned. "No, I wasn't. I just woke up because you screamed my name." I hadn't screamed. I knew I hadn't. "Lily," you were staring at me. smiling. And then you just got up and walked to the door like you weren't even awake. Her frown deepened. Nathan, I just woke up. She sounded normal. Looked normal. But I knew what I'd seen. Something was very, very wrong. And I was terrified to find out what.
I didn't sleep at all after that. Not really. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lily's soft breathing beside me, wondering if she'd wake up again, if she'd turn to me with that awful, unnatural smile. Morning came, but it brought no relief. When Lily finally stirred beside me, she stretched and yawned like nothing was wrong, her face soft and relaxed in the golden morning light. "You look like hell," she murmured, reaching out to brush my unshaven cheek. "Did you sleep at all?" I shook my head. "You were sleepwalking again." She frowned. "Again?" I sat up, rubbing my face. "Lily, I know this sounds insane, but you keep waking up in the middle of the night and smiling at me." She blinked, then let out a soft chuckle. "Smiling? Nathan, I don't smile in my sleep." "I know," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "That's the problem. It's not a normal smile. It's wrong." She sighed, pushing herself up to sit beside me. "You think I'm sleepwalking?" I nodded. "And talking. Last night, you walked to the door, and when I called your name, you acted like I was the one being weird." Lily's frown deepened. "Nathan, I don't remember that at all." I swallowed hard. "I think we should record it." She raised an eyebrow. "What?" "If I set up my phone at night, we can see what's happening. Maybe show it to a doctor." For a moment, she hesitated. Then she sighed. "Fine. If it'll make you feel better." It didn't make me feel better. That night, I propped my phone against the nightstand and set it to record before turning off the lights. Lily mumbled a drowsy goodnight and was out within minutes. I, on the other hand, lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting. And waiting. Somewhere around 2 a.m., exhaustion won. My eyelids grew heavy, and before I knew it, I was slipping into unconsciousness. Then. A soft creak. My eyes shot open. The room was dark, but I could feel it. That eerie, suffocating sensation of being watched. Slowly, I turned my head. Lily was already looking at me. Already smiling that I froze. My mouth went dry. This time, she was sitting up. Her face, barely visible in the sliver of moonlight, was frozen in that awful, stretched-out grin. Her head tilted slightly, her eyes locked onto mine. Every hair on my body stood on end. I wanted to speak. To say her name. But something deep, something primal, told me not to. Instead, I watched, my breath shallow, as she slowly, painfully slowly, tilted her head back, until I heard the faintest pop. A sickeningly deep, guttural laugh bubbled from her throat. But it wasn't Lily's laugh. It was wrong. Then, as suddenly as it started, her head snapped back into place. She blinked, once, twice, then frowned. "Nathan?" I scrambled away from her, nearly falling off the bed. "What the fuck?" She blinked again, her eyes filled with confusion. "What's wrong?" You were laughing," I stammered. "Your head, Jesus, Lily," it bent back. She paled. "What?" I reached for my phone with shaking hands, stopping the recording. My fingers were clammy as I played it back. The footage was worse than I could have imagined. At around 1:58 a.m., Lily sat up in a slow, unnatural motion, her head snapping toward me like a marionette being jerked by invisible strings. Her face, God, her face, was stretched in that impossible grin. But what made my stomach churn was the sound. A faint whispering. Not from her. From somewhere else in the room. The whisper was faint but unmistakable, layered like multiple voices speaking at once. Then, at the exact moment she tilted her head back, the whisper turned into a distorted, warped laugh, deep and inhuman. And then, the video glitched. A full second of static before the footage returned, showing Lily sitting there, normal again, looking confused. Lily's hands trembled as she clutched the blanket. That can't be real. I swallowed. It is real. She looked at me, her eyes filling with fear. Nathan. I don't remember any of it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was happening to Lily wasn't just sleepwalking. And whatever was smiling at me in the dark, it might not be her at all. The next day, we tried to go about life as usual, but there was a heavy tension in the air. Lily was quieter than normal, her movements slower, more deliberate. She barely touched her breakfast, and every so often, I caught her staring at nothing, lost in thought. When I asked if she was okay, she forced a small smile and nodded. Just tired. But something inside me whispered that she wasn't just tired. She was scared. By nightfall, I debated whether I should even sleep in the same bed. But the thought of leaving her alone made my skin crawl. What if she got up again? What if she did something worse? So I set up the phone again. And this time, I propped a second one up near the door, just in case. When I lay down, I didn't even pretend to close my eyes. I just waited. 1:30 a.m. Lily stirred beside me. My heart pounded. 1:45 a.m. She let out a long breath, shifting slightly under the covers. 1:50 a.m. Her eyes opened. I held my breath. And then, she gasped. A sharp, ragged inhale as if she had been holding her breath for too long. Her body went stiff, and then she shot up, back perfectly straight, eyes wide and black. I scrambled backward, pressing against the headboard. Lily. Her mouth trembled. Then, slowly, she turned her head toward me and she wasn't smiling anymore. Her lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. It was layered, deep and distorted, echoing in the dark. He let me in. The whisper from the video. My blood ran cold. What, who? She let out a choked sob, and then her body collapsed forward. I caught her before she hit the bed, my hands shaking as I shook her shoulders. Lily. Lily, wake up. Her eyes fluttered open. This time, they were normal. Confused. Scared. Nathan, she whispered. Why are you crying? I didn't realize I was. Because at that moment, I knew, this wasn't just sleepwalking. It wasn't a nightmare. Something was inside my wife. Something that had been waiting in the dark. And now, it wasn't just smiling at me anymore. Lily had no memory of what happened. Not the whispering. Not the black eyes. Not the thing that spoke through her in that horrible, layered voice. She only remembered going to bed and waking up to me crying and shaking her. The fear in her eyes was real. But that didn't change the truth. Something was inside her. Something that was using her body like a mask. That morning, I made an appointment with a sleep specialist. Lily was reluctant, but she agreed after seeing the footage. I don't understand, she said softly as we sat on the couch. The sunlight pouring in through the windows made the night feel like a bad dream. Almost. I've never sleepwalked before. Why now? I wanted to tell her the truth. That I didn't think this was sleepwalking at all. But I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. Instead, I reached for her hand. We'll figure it out, okay? She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. The appointment was set for a week later. But we didn't make it that long. Because things got worse. Much, much worse. That night, I refused to sleep. I set up both phones again, making sure they were fully charged, fully recording. If whatever was inside Lily tried something, I wanted proof. Lily fell asleep quickly. She always did. I lay beside her, heart pounding, waiting. 1 a.m. The room was silent. The kind of silence that felt unnatural, wrong. Like the world itself was holding its breath. 1:30 a.m. I started to feel lightheaded, dizzy. My body felt heavy, sluggish, like something was pressing down on my chest. I tried to sit up, but my limbs wouldn't move. My heart pounded. Sleep paralysis. It had to be. Then I heard it. A faint click from the closet door. My eyes flicked to the dark corner of the room. The door was open, not wide. Just an inch or two. Enough for something to peek out. A shadow shifted behind it. No. No, that wasn't real. That was my mind playing tricks. Sleep paralysis did this to people, didn't it? Made them see things. But then. The door creaked open more. And a hand, thin, pale, with fingers too long, slid out from the darkness. My breath caught in my throat that I wanted to scream. Wanted to move. But my body was frozen, trapped in invisible chains. The hand gripped the edge of the door, its nails scraping softly against the wood. Then, slowly, a face emerged. A face that looked exactly like Lily. But it wasn't her. I knew it wasn't her. Because Lily was still lying beside me. The thing in the closet smiled. And then. Lily sat up. Her head turned sharply in the thing's direction, and for a split second, I thought, oh God, she sees it too. But she didn't react like someone seeing a nightmare. She reacted like someone recognizing an old friend. She smiled back. My body finally broke free. I gasped, jerking upright, and the moment I did. The closet door slammed shut. Lily turned to me, blinking as if confused. Nathan? I scrambled off the bed, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Did you see that? Tell me you saw that, Lily. She looked around the room, brows furrowed. See what? The closet. You looked at it and smiled at. I stopped. Because the closet door was closed. Not open. Not even a crack. Lily's frown deepened. Nathan, maybe you should be the one seeing a doctor. I ran both hands through my hair, my breathing uneven. No. No, I saw it. She sighed and swung her legs over the bed, heading toward the bathroom. I sat there, shaking. I needed to check the footage. Now. I grabbed my phone, fingers trembling as I scrolled to the recording. I pressed play. The video showed me sitting in bed, stiff as a corpse, eyes locked on the closet. Then. The door did open. Just a crack. And Lily, asleep Lily, sat up. She did turn toward it. But the video didn't show the thing inside. It only showed the door opening, and Lily's unnatural smile. Then. The video glitched. A full 3 seconds of static. And when it cleared. Lily was lying down again. And the closet was closed. Like nothing had ever happened. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called a priest. I didn't even know if I believed in that kind of thing. But I had no other options. He agreed to come the next day. But once again. We didn't make it that long. Because that night was the worst of all. I woke up to a sound. Not the creaking of the bed. Not Lily shifting beside me. A whisper. Low. Muted. Right in my ear. Let me in. I bolted upright. Lily wasn't in bed. I looked around wildly, my heart hammering. Lily? A sound came from the bathroom. The door was ajar, the dim light spilling into the dark bedroom. I got up slowly, every step feeling like I was walking towards something I shouldn't. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Lily was standing in front of the mirror. Her back was to me, her hands limp at her sides. But her reflection was smiling. Her real face was blank. Emotionless. But in the glass, her reflection was grinning, wide, impossibly wide, her lips stretching far past what was humanly possible. And then, the reflection turned its head toward me. But Lily's real body didn't move. Just the thing in the glass. I choked on a gasp, stumbling backward. The reflection raised a hand, slowly pressing its palm to the glass. Its fingers twitched. Then, it stepped forward. I grabbed Lily's arm, yanking her back. The moment I did, she gasped like someone coming up for air, blinking rapidly. Her reflection was normal again. She turned to me, confused. "Nathan? What's wrong?" I didn't answer. Because I was staring at the mirror. And the faint outline of a handprint was still on the glass that we weren't dealing with sleepwalking. We weren't dealing with dreams. Something had entered our home. Something had entered her. And now, it didn't just want her. It wanted me, too. I didn't sleep. After what I saw in the mirror, I couldn't. Lily had gone back to bed like nothing happened. But I sat in the living room, wide-eyed, my mind racing. The handprint on the mirror. The voice whispering in my ear. The thing wearing Lily's face inside the closet. It all meant one thing. There was something else in this house. And it had been here long before I noticed. The priest was supposed to arrive at noon. I spent the morning in a haze, barely able to function. I kept expecting to see movement in the corner of my eye. Shadows where there shouldn't be any. Lily, on the other hand, seemed fine. Too fine. She hummed while she made breakfast, acting as if nothing had happened. No mention of last night. No concern about the past few days. When I finally spoke, my voice was dry. "You don't feel anything?" She glanced at me over her coffee mug. "Like what?" I hesitated. "Like, something's wrong." She frowned. "Nathan, you haven't slept in days. I think you're making yourself sick." A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to believe she was right. That I was just overtired, losing my grip on reality. But then she smiled, and for a split second, it was too wide. I blinked, and it was gone. A trick of the light. Maybe. Or maybe. Something else was looking back at me. Noon came. And the priest never arrived. I called his number, no answer. I called again. And again. Nothing. A cold weight settled in my gut. Lily sighed beside me. "See? You don't need all this. There's nothing wrong." Her voice was gentle. Too gentle. Like she was trying to soothe me. Like I was something that needed to be calmed. That night, I locked the bedroom door. I didn't tell Lily why. I just did it. She didn't complain. She simply climbed into bed, pulling the covers over herself, and was asleep within minutes. I sat in the chair across the room, phone recording in my lap, waiting. 1:00 a.m., the room was still. 1:30 a.m. My eyelids grew heavy, but I forced myself to stay awake. 2 a.m. Then. A faint scratching sound. My breath hitched. It was coming from the door. Not the closet this time. Something was outside that I stared, frozen, as the doorknob rattled. Not violently. Just enough to send a shiver down my spine. Then. A whisper. Right at the door. "Nathan." My lungs seized. It wasn't Lily's voice. It wasn't even close. I gripped the phone, my hands slick with sweat. The doorknob twisted again. Harder. Faster. I stood up, backing away. Lily shifted in bed, sighing in her sleep. Then. It stopped. Silence. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. Didn't move. Then, slowly, I crept toward the door. Pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. I swallowed hard. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. I had to check. I had to. I turned it slowly. The door creaked open an inch. And a hand shot through the gap. I screamed, stumbling backward. The hand was gray, long-fingered, with nails sharp as knives. It clawed at the door, jerking wildly, trying to force its way in. Then. Lily sat up. Her eyes snapped open. And she grinned. The thing at the door let out a wet, rasping chuckle. Then. It spoke. She let me in. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I slammed the door shut, locking it, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. Lily tilted her head at me. Nathan? I pressed my back against the door, chest heaving. You heard that. You heard that, right? She blinked slowly. He's always been here. Her voice was calm. Empty. The room suddenly felt wrong. Too still. Too cold. I grabbed the phone, scrambling to play back the recording. My hands shook as I watched. The door rattled. The whisper called my name. But Lily. Lily had been awake the whole time. Not asleep. Not stirring. Sitting up. Watching. Smiling. A tear slipped down my cheek. I looked up at her, my breath shuddering. What did you do? I whispered. Her smile widened. And in the dim light. Her shadow on the wall didn't match her body. It was taller. Thinner. And it was smiling, too. At dawn, I packed a bag. Lily sat on the bed, watching me, expression unreadable. You're leaving, she said softly. I swallowed hard. I need help, Lily. We need help. She stood slowly, tilting her head. You won't like what happens if you leave. My fingers clenched around the bag strap. What does that mean? She didn't answer. She just smiled. I bolted. Ran to the door. Tore it open. And froze. The priest was standing outside. His eyes were black. His lips curled into a grin. I'm sorry for the delay, he said, voice thick with something inhuman. Lily's voice came from behind me. Calm. Soft. See? I told you he'd come. I turned, heart hammering. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. At the thing that was pretending to be a man. And the thing smiled back. The priest stepped forward. Lily held out her hand. He took it. And as I watched in horror, their shadows merged. I staggered backward, bile rising in my throat. Lily. She turned to me. Her eyes weren't brown anymore. They were black. Pure, endless black. And when she spoke, it wasn't her voice anymore. It was his. You should have left sooner. I screamed. And the lights went out. The darkness swallowed the room. A thick, suffocating blackness that pressed against my skin like unseen hands. My breath hitched as I stumbled back, reaching for the wall, the door, anything solid to ground myself. Then I heard it. A slow, shuddering breath inches from my face. Lily. Or whatever used to be Lily. A whisper slithered through the dark, curling around my ears like a wet, decayed thing. Nathan, don't run. I did the opposite. I turned and bolted. My hands fumbled for the door handle, but my fingers met nothing. The doorway was gone, replaced by endless void, thick as tar. I spun around wildly, but the living room, the hallway, even the walls had vanished. I wasn't in my house anymore. I was somewhere else. And I wasn't alone. A sound, wet, dragging, came from behind me. A shape loomed in the darkness, shifting, stretching, growing taller than it had any right to be. Then, a hand shot out. It clamped onto my shoulder, fingers digging in, cold as death. My knees buckled as an impossible weight pressed down, forcing me to my knees. I gasped, struggling, but it was useless. And then, right by my ear, that same voice, Lily's, but layered with something wrong, spoke again. "You let me in." I shook my head violently. "No, I didn't, I never." A slow chuckle vibrated through the air, rattling in my chest. "Yes, you did. Every time you looked. Every time you stayed. Every time you doubted yourself. You let me in the moment you feared me." My stomach turned. I tried to fight, to push back against the invisible weight pinning me down, but my limbs felt like lead. I thought about Lily. The way she had changed. The way she smiled at me in the dark. I hadn't fought it. I had let it happen. And now, it was too late. Something wet pressed against the side of my face. A tongue. A tongue. My whole body convulsed in horror. Then. Light. Blinding. Sudden. A sound, loud, commanding, shattered the darkness like a hammer against glass. A voice. But not the thing's voice. Not Lily's. Someone else. I was yanked back into reality, my lungs sucking in air so fast I choked. I was in my living room. The priest stood over me. The real priest. His face pale, his eyes wide, clutching a small silver cross so tightly his knuckles were white. "Nathan," he said, breathless. "Are you all right?" I blinked, gasping, my mind struggling to catch up. The darkness, the thing, was gone. But Lily. I turned. She was still there. Standing in the corner of the room. Staring. But she wasn't smiling anymore. Her face was blank, emotionless, her body rigid. But her shadow. Her shadow was still smiling. The priest followed my gaze, his jaw tightening. "She's still in there." I swallowed hard. What is it? What's happening to her?" The priest exhaled sharply, gripping the cross tighter. "It's not her anymore." My throat closed. No. No, she's still, she has to be. A deep, rattling growl rumbled from Lily's throat. The lights flickered. The air grew thick, suffocating. Then. She lunged. But not toward me. Toward the priest. Her body moved in a blur, faster than it should have been possible. Her fingers curled into claws, her mouth split too wide. The priest barely had time to react. He raised the cross between them, and Lily screamed. Not in pain. In rage. The windows shattered. The walls trembled. The air pulsed with something ancient and furious. But the priest didn't waver. He started chanting, voice steady, unwavering, words rolling out in a language I didn't understand. Lily thrashed, her body contorting, twisting, her limbs bending at wrong angles. Her eyes, black, soulless, locked onto mine. Then. She laughed. Soft at first. Then louder. Louder. Until it wasn't laughter anymore. It was screaming. The lights exploded. The floor cracked beneath her feet. Then, in a voice that wasn't hers, she spoke. You can't take her from me. The priest didn't stop. The air rippled. Something peeled away from Lily, something dark, thick, like smoke, like tar. It screamed. Then. It ripped free. And everything stopped. Lily collapsed. The air lightened. The house fell silent. The priest staggered, his chest rising and falling. And I ran to her. I dropped to my knees, pulling her into my arms, hands shaking. Lily, Lily, wake up. Her eyelids fluttered. A moment of silence. Then. She gasped. She sucked in air like she'd been drowning, her body jerking violently. Her eyes snapped open. And they were brown. Normal, human. I let out a sob. Lily? She blinked up at me. Confused. Terrified. Nathan. Her voice was small. Fragile. What's happening? I pulled her against me, pressing my forehead to hers. You're okay, I whispered. You're okay. But she wasn't. Not really. Because she didn't remember. She didn't remember any of it. Not the smiles. Not the whispers. Not the thing that had worn her skin. And maybe. That was for the best. We moved out the next day. I didn't go back for anything. I didn't care. We left the house behind. Left it behind. And for a long time, I thought that was the end of it. Until 2 weeks later. I woke up in our new apartment. Everything was quiet. Normal. Safe. Then I turned over in bed. And Lily was awake. Staring at me. Smiling. And in the silence, she whispered. You should have never left the door open. And the lights went out.